Christmas Eve, the Johnson family was preparing for their holiday traditions, decorating the tree, baking cookies, and getting the stockings ready. But as they sat down to enjoy a warm meal, they heard a strange noise from above. At first they thought it was just the old house settling, but then it became unmistakable, the sound of heavy footsteps pacing around in the attic. The parents tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the wind or the house's old creaky beams. But as midnight approached, the noise grew louder. The children, Emily and Ben, begged their parents to check, but they brushed it off as their imagination. Still, a feeling of unease lingered in the air, like something was wrong. Later that night, Emily woke up to a soft thud coming from the attic door. She pulled her blanket over her head and tried to go back to sleep, but a low, gravelly voice broke through the silence.
He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake.
The words sent chills down her spine. Slowly, she turned her head to see a shadow standing at the foot of her bed. It was tall, with a long, scuffy beard and a tattered red suit. But there was something wrong with its face. Distorted, hollow, and pale, its eyes gleamed with a cold, malevolent hunger.
Santa?
She whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but it slowly raised one gloved hand as if beckoning her. Just then, the father burst into the room with a flashlight, but the figure vanished into the shadows with a faint, echoing laugh. The family searched the attic the next morning, but found nothing unusual. No sign of anyone having been there. But from that Christmas Eve on, they could never shake the feeling that something was watching them, waiting for them to fall asleep. On Christmas Eve, the small town of Briarwood was blanketed in snow, and the streets were quiet as families tucked in for the night. The town was used to the casual Christmas cheer, but this year something was different. A dark rumor had been swirling, one that no one wanted to believe. Just weeks before Christmas, a patient had escaped the St. Mary's Mental Hospital, a facility known for housing the most disturbed individuals. His name was Richard Graves, and he had been admitted years ago after a series of brutal crimes. He claimed to be Santa Claus, and every year during Christmas, his delusions grew more intense. The hospital staff had warned that he might try to deliver gifts to the town once again. That night, as the clock struck midnight, the Johnson family sat down by the fire, exchanging gifts and laughter, but outside in the shadows, something moved. A soft tap on the window startled them. Sarah stood up and peered outside, but saw nothing. She turned back to the room, chalking it up to the wind. But then came another tap, closer this time. Her husband, Mark, rose from his chair, frowning. "I'll check it out," he said, walking towards the door. The moment Mark stepped outside, a chill filled the room. Sarah heard him shout something. A strangled cry of surprise, and then silence. Terrified, Sarah rushed to the door and opened it just in time to see Mark stumbling back, his face pale as death. In his hands, he clutched a large red sack. He tried to say something but couldn't. His mouth opened and closed like he was choking. His eyes were wide with terror. Then she heard it, a low rumbling laugh from the darkness. The sound grew closer and a figure appeared at the edge of their porch, dressed in a tattered red suit and filthy white beard. His eyes gleamed like ice, empty and cold.
"I'm here to deliver presents,"
the man rasped, his voice hoarse with madness.
"Santa doesn't forget the naughty ones."
But before Sarah could scream, he lunged forward. His hands were cold as they wrapped around her throat, and his eyes were filled with twisted glee. In the moments before everything went black, Sarah saw the sack he carried swing open, and inside were the broken, lifeless bodies of every person who had ever crossed his path. When the police arrived later that night, they found the house empty, the door ajar. There were no signs of struggle, no bloodshed, only a single red mitten laying on the doorstep. And then in the distance, as they searched the woods, they heard a low voice drifting through the trees.
Hey, hey, hey.